Fake news has been around for centuries, and not just in the United States, but also around the globe. It is not something Donald Trump himself has introduced or even created. A survey was conducted online about fake news. The link was posted on Facebook, and anyone who was willing to post their answer was invited to participate. Respondents were asked, before the 2016 presidential election, had you ever heard the term fake news before? 65% said no, they had not heard the term before the election, while 35% had said they had heard the term before. Another question respondents were asked is, do you think fake news was an influential factor in the 2016 presidential election? 40% of the respondents said maybe, 45% said yes, and 15% said no. Another question they were asked is, did you ever come across fake news on your social media timeline? A resounding 85% said yes, they had come across fake news, while only 15% said no. Another question they were asked is, did you or someone you know believe a story that turned out to be fake? 80% of the respondents said yes. They or someone that they knew believed a story that turned out to be fake, while only 20% said no. Besides just sending out an online survey, I also decided to interview 2 ONU students to get their personal opinions on fake news. First is Megan Kennedy, who is a senior marketing major.
I first heard of fake news throughout the election with Donald Trump, when he started throwing that term out there all the time. That was probably the first time I heard of it. I think fake news is something that citizens should be worried about because different news outlets and stuff can portray news in different ways, and I think a lot of Americans and citizens decide to watch one news channel over another, like religiously, and that could be a problem if the one is always portraying fake news, which you hear about a lot. I think that fake news did impact the 2016 election just because with Trump saying everything was fake news, and they did kind of turn everything between Hillary and him both ways, with the email scandal and everything else. They kind of portrayed them both in different ways depending on what news outlet you watched, based on pretty much the party of the news outlet, from what it seemed. I think that the most one example of fake news that somebody would have believed is all the kind of over dramatic things that they said about like Hillary Clinton's emails and stuff. Um, some of those, like, there would be completely opposite. Like she was emailing for attack. Like, it was crazy things, and I guess that kind of thing would be the biggest example that I saw of people believing that, just because before the election Hillary was so predicted to win that more people were paying attention to her. I think there's still fake news today. Different events that go on, or especially politically, just because Trump is so liked and disliked both ways, like so dramatically, that people who don't like Trump will believe anything said bad about Trump, even the slightest thing, and they'll blow it way out of context. And the same the other way, they'll hear the slightest good thing and they'll make it sound like the world's greatest thing that ever happened. And I think that's kind of, that's kind of fake news, but it's the news trying to portray in a way that they're going to make the other person take it somewhere crazy. I think it's both, like mainstream media like CNN and that, and journalists posting fake things, because a lot of people won't actually look into who wrote a paper. Like, so if they see something or read something, they're just going to assume it's right, and not look into that it's not even a journalist, it's just some guy down the street who didn't like whoever or didn't like this or that. They're not going to look and see if it's actually credible. And that's, I think, part of the problem is because so many people write like blogs and stuff like that, and people take that like they are 100% serious and know exactly what they're talking about when they don't. And then news kind of does it too. Just the way they say things, they seem to mean to make somebody take it the wrong way, and kind of they expect them to make it over dramatic in one way or another just by the way they word things and the way they say things. I would say I don't trust news 100%. It'd be maybe like 50, depending on the source. Like CNN and Fox and CBS and stuff like that, I wouldn't really take to heart, but more like New York Times or like Wall Street Journal, more like real credible resources I would be more reliable on than some reporter for ABC News. I would probably take to heart a little bit more what they say in a more serious publication like the New York Times or Wall Street or something like that. But I still wouldn't believe it 100%, kind of probably like 50 to 75. Or watch, like you kind of have to, not just one article, you kind of have to read a couple different news sources, and then probably about 50% or 75% of what you read in all of the articles you look at. Yeah, I would say I put more trust in print journalism rather than broadcasting. I think just because like the news on TV and stuff, I feel like they don't quite do as much research as like a print journalism person would. They kind of just like do a quick interview and take basis off of that, even if one little thing said, they're going to spin it way out of proportion. Whereas news, like printed news, doesn't really seem to do that as much. They kind of leave it more unbiased.
Next is Amber Dubrava, who is a P3 in the pharmacy program and who has some interesting thoughts towards fake news.
I hadn't heard the term fake news until the 2016 presidential election. Yes, I do think it's something we as citizens should definitely be worried about. Because people have the tendencies to believe an article, and no matter how absurd it could be. So if it turns out to be fake, you could have people freaking out over something that is not even close to being true. Yes, I do believe it impacted the 2016 presidential election. Well, both candidates threw out allegations at each other, and people didn't really go and check it to make sure that it was true. So you had people believing things that were false about both candidates, and even Trump, for example, any allegation he had thrown out at him, even if it wasn't by an opposing candidate, it could be by like a news station or something like that, or the media, without an allegation, he would immediately call it fake news when it actually did turn out to be true, but people would believe him over the media, and I believe that could have swayed a lot of people. Yes, I have come across fake news on my social media. One specific example that comes to mind is there was a news article saying that the Pope endorsed Trump during the election, which turned out to not be true. So that's just one example I can think of. It's a very tricky question as to if I trust the media or not. I wouldn't say no, but I also would not say yes, because they tend to make things a little bit fluffy, or they use sensational lies. A percentage. I think that depends on the article, because there are some things that they have no problem of just being truthful about, but there are other things that they tend to curb the lie. Like if there's a shooting or something, they'll make someone out to be, a complete and utter terrorist and do everything they can to make him out to be a terrorist. Or they'll do the complete opposite and make him sound like an angel before the shooting even occurred. So I think it just all depends on the news article and what it is that they're reporting on. Yes, I do think fake news is still around.